Hello, I'm Nathan P. Butler, author of a Saga on Home Video and host from the Star Wars Home Video Library here on YouTube, and this is Star Wars Home Video Year by Year. This time we take a look at 1990, and it's actually a pretty big year for Star Wars Home Video releases in the US. There's a couple of foreign ones we'll look at here, but primarily this is a big US kind of year for Star Wars Home Video releases. Recall that in 1986, we had the release of Return of the Jedi on home video, which meant that you could actually own the entire trilogy. But not as any kind of set. Just, you could own all three and kind of make your own set. Then in 1988, we did get a set, but it was with a paper band around it, not an actual formal boxed set in the US. Well, 1990 finally answers the call and brings us the first original trilogy box set in the United States. It is from CBS Fox Video. This will be important later, in a couple of years here. Inside it, you have the individual releases. I would note these here. A New Hope with the Star Wars logo over kind of off to the left. CBS Fox on the packaging. Little images of the characters on top and on the spines. And then the back sort of set up as a couple of rectangles here. We will find that this will subtly change for the next release in 1992, and sometimes people get these confused because they do look so similar. That there is the look for 1990, the first time we actually get these films in a box set in the US, so you can just buy them all at once, have them in a nice package. It's a nice moment. That said, that's not to say that other regions might not have had a leg up on us when it came to box sets, so to jump out of the US briefly for just a moment, Germany got... Why is there no image? Germany got this set. They got their own box set in the US, the Silver Screen Collection, and it was this. It was A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, and The Making of Star Wars in a single box set. Now, Ewok Adventure would not have been something we could have had because ours were being distributed over here by a different company in 1990, MGM UA Home Video, as we will see in just a moment. But yeah, Germany got a nice, cool, even bigger box set than the US did in 1990. So it's cool that we finally got ours, but ours wasn't as cool as some places. Of course, in the last episode, we looked at 1989, which is when A New Hope hit widescreen in the United States in that special widescreen edition LaserDisc that wasn't great. It had its aspect ratio issues, but at least it was a widescreen release. That series, the special widescreen edition, continued in 1990 with the release of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And no, there is no packaging consistency here. Black bars instead of gray here for Return of the Jedi. The color of the logo differs between products. But at least you can actually get the entire trilogy to watch in widescreen at this point, although again, with that flawed version of A New Hope. Now, a moment ago, I mentioned Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure in that German Silver Screen Collection set. Well, finally in the US, years after other regions already got them, we started to get actual home video releases of the Ewok telemovies, starting with, of course, Caravan of Courage and Ewok Adventure, known over here typically as just the Ewok Adventure. So we have ourselves a LaserDisc release, and we have a VHS release, though I would note that if you're hunting these down as a collector, there's also a rental VHS version. Mine is super, super faded, but they are slightly different in that the labels are different. Sort of a black and white, silvery gray kind of thing for retail, and then shiny silver with red and black text for rental. And doesn't that just bring you back? Be kind, rewind. Kids today will never know the struggle. And of course, I said Ewok Telemovies, plural, so in the same year, we get Battle for Endor, also on LaserDisc and on VHS. And again, there is a difference between the retail label and the, very faded here, rental label, again, if you are hunting them down today. Briefly, while we're still on the Ewok Telemovies, I would note that the UK is this one region that just keeps getting Battle for Endor over and over again, and sure enough, they got yet another Battle for Endor over in the UK again here, this time from the so-called box office collection. While we're talking UK, I should also note that they got another round of the making of specials out on VHS in 1990 that we really didn't have an equivalent of over in the US, but it was missing SPFX The Empire Strikes Back, but it did have from Star Wars: The Jedi, The Making of a Saga, which we saw with a new US release last year, and we'll see another US release of that in 1992. But the other big non-live action film thing in 1990 for the US, alongside the Ewok telemovies, was Ewoks and Droids, the cartoon series. It had been years since they had been prominent on television. We'd already seen releases in other markets, like in the UK, where they got almost complete season sets of each series, where there was just one episode missing from each season. Surely the US would get something similar, or maybe get the entire thing with that missing episode included. Oh, hell no! The US got severely screwed when it came to Droids and Ewoks, unfortunately. Or, fortunately, if you remember the second season of Ewoks, which I will not let go. I will not let go of the fact that Ewok Season 2 was so horrible compared to the first. When Ewok Season 1 is your benchmark of greatness compared to something else, you know it's horrible. Anyway, so two series here, of course, Ewoks and Droids, but they had a weird approach. These are all through J2 Communications, and we basically only had 3 releases of each series. One release from each series was just a single episode on a VHS. Okay, so we have The Lost Prince here, a single episode for Droids. But then, they also did another one that is essentially a Volume 1 as a so-called special double-length edition, all part of the so-called Star Wars Trilogy animated collection. We'll use names similar to that a few times in the future here. But this is Volume 1 with The White Witch and Escape into Terror. They followed that up with Volume 2, which would then include The Lost Prince and The New King. So understand what we're seeing here with Droids, because it's really stupid. So first off, they've got an individual episode here, and it's the same duplicated over to what we would see in one of the double-length episodes. So this is effectively redundant if you've got this already. Not sure what they were trying to do. Maybe they were trying to launch 2 different product lines and see what audiences would flock to before they made decisions about stuff later, but for whatever reason, we have some redundancy right out of the gate here. Also, if you know anything about the Droids cartoon series, it is that the Droids cartoon series, barring the Great Heap and Kobe and the Star Hunters, are more like bridging stories. The stories in Droids were told in 4-episode arcs, actual arc-based storytelling in Star Wars. That's how they were able to take those arcs later, in 2 of the cases at least, and sort of bastardize them, edit them into feature-length movies for later releases here. So 4 episodes make up one story arc. What did they give us? The first 2 episodes of one story arc, and then on Volume 2, the first 2 episodes of another story arc. What? It makes no sense to anyone who actually knows what they're looking at with that series. I'm assuming J2 Communications simply didn't. Now with Ewoks, it wasn't quite as bad. Ewoks didn't tell stories in arc forms. You could sort of rearrange them as you see fit in many respects. Not all, but many respects, continuity-wise, for Ewoks. But they did still do the same type of thing where you had this weird single episode release in the white packaging here for the Tree of Light in this case, and then 2 special double-length editions that had 2 episodes each, with Volume 1 having Cries of the Trees and the Tree of Light. So again, redundancy in what they're putting out here. And then Volume 2 with the Haunted Village and Blue Harvest. What's weird about Ewoks is that if you look at the Tree of Light, for collectors, you might be wanting to hunt down 2 of these. Why 2? Because there's a misprint in this series. You'll notice this one. This is from the one with just the Tree of Light on it. Volume 1, and it lists 2 episodes. So it's essentially telling me that it's this one. Except, notice the labels are actually different between the correct label on the real Volume 1 of the special double-length edition ones, and the wrong label here on the single episode one. So there is an erroneous one. This seems to be much more common. Every once in a while, though, you will actually find one of these with the correct label on it for the single episode version, but it certainly seems to be more rare than the others. But that was it. We didn't get any more Ewoks or Droids in the United States at all as individual episodes, unless you count eventually getting them on Disney+. Everything else we would eventually get for Ewoks in the US would be to take 4 episodes at a time and sort of splice them together to turn those arcs for Droids into full-length movies, and then for Ewoks to take 4 pretty much unrelated episodes and do the exact same thing, which made no sense. So, yeah, when it came to Ewoks and droids, that is one giant hole in the Star Wars home video market, at least for the United States. If you want to find those, you can find them elsewhere, but understand that if you go for something like the UK versions, you can have them in your collection like I do, but they are PAL, not NTSC, so you'll need an all-region VCR to be able to play them at all. But at least you'd have them in the collection to fill that gap left by these ridiculous J2 Communications releases in 1990. The next year was a big year for Star Wars in general with the launch of the expanded universe with Heir to the Empire and Dark Empire, but what will it hold for Star Wars home video? We'll see in our next episode as we check out 1991.